I was watching a recent art conference, and there were five. I liked the format. It was 5 8-minute acts. We had five presenters that were given 8 minutes, strict 8 minutes. I think that's sort of dynamic, but both the curator of the event was a frumpy middle-aged woman that didn't make a very off-putting impression, but where she's been educated and what she thinks about ideological issues would be nice to know. But in any case, it was curated in such a way that was pretty annoying. Like all of her acts were sort of messed up on some level, um, which is great when you can watch it on YouTube. Like you can see directly what these institutions are producing and who's doing it. They have like a robotic way about them. You have to think these are people that are pros in curating events, but they're curating it in a wrong, inverted way. Something that is more or less, I would say that the theme of trolling does go through all of the acts. Like there is, if you look at each individual segment as like, where's the troll going to come in during this act? And think of them as actors, like social actors, because they're not authentic. The only reason they're reading in front of something is because they've made some type of ideological concessions. So there's a groupthink and vibe going on. So they're not really talented. They're, just think of them as like freelancers, somebody that would otherwise be hanging wallpaper or something. But because they have these connections with these people who are affiliated with these types of events, if they dress themselves up in the role and have the ability to present, not very plausibly, but at least sort of go through the motions of an intellectually curious person. But again, they have commonalities that go through. Like, it's just like Russian propaganda, right? They have some different methods, and some of them are effective. Like they have the whataboutism, just So they'll ask you a question as if they do this sometimes in conferences where there's a question and answer session. So these people prepare for that because it's an exploit into the venue, and then they have this way of parroting narratives. Like, oh yeah, well you mentioned this, and they pick up, of course, on whatever hot button issues they can pick up on, which leads mostly to people making bland and diffused type of presentations because they don't want to offend anybody. So they've created all of these different like micro offenses that you could commit, and then the question session is a way that these people can taint the venue, poison the venue with their venom and misdirection and stupidity, and of course waste up time. So they also don't like to just ask a straight question. They go into a diatribe so that they take up part of the venue. And there's really nothing you can do. I mean, you'd have to sort of wrestle them right out of the room, and then they would cause a ruckus, and that would be like an additional agitatory thing they could add on top of the wasted time incident. I was roughed up for just trying to ask a question. Right, that really does. It's sort of like a venue kill. You were talking about Monet, but there were two things that they didn't like about your presentation, and so this is their way as ideological minders to get revenge or enact some type of punishment on you. So, but not to offend those people, you have to make everything bland in general. But they go further than that. The real ideologues find their talking points, and they just keep bringing them in all the time, like these fake narratives. You know, women were oppressed by men in the past, and therefore, you know, like what? Like, what are you talking about? So, but personalizing politics, you know, causing enmity, causing fights. This is just, again, divide and conquer in the social realm. Because you have a unified social realm, it could lead to a unified political realm. And because that's led to bad consequences for rent seekers and whoever else puppifies political processes, that they figure it's sociologically more advantageous for them as the rent-seeking class that in no social venue anywhere that there's some type of consensus other than the messed up consensus that they've agreed upon as a minority, extreme minority viewpoint that doesn't hold up to scrutiny. I mean, if you were to apply different statistics like social well-being statistics or mental health statistics to people that go through their social programs, it's like exterminationist. I mean, you might get I'm going to say the lowest 5. That's sort of, but see, that's all they need. It's like a decimation funnel because they just want polished torpedoes at the end. And the rest of the people, they just want to taint them for life, put them on the wrong track, looking in the wrong direction with the wrong viewpoint on things. Like increasing enmity between men and women on stupid, trivial issues, that's like a really, really, really bad karma. That is just devastatingly misguided and wrong. But that doesn't mean flattering women or caving into what they say the history books indicate or whatever else they want to barge their way around with little stories why they should be at the top when guess what? A lot of men didn't make it to the top either. They just have this apex fallacy that just drives them off a cliff. So the presenters were a mix of men and women. Again, frumpy middle-aged ones are sort of a staple in these events, and then they had a mumble rapper just opening up, with the first 8 minutes, so that sort of set the tone. Then you had one guy he quoted Adorno Adorno. Who would quote Adorno in 2023 that isn't a total torpedo? Like thinking that guy's still relevant. Like, I'm going to make this guy relevant even in this day and age, despite nobody seeing that. Like somebody who would quote him, you just know he has taken over. He's adopted his way of operating. So it's pure. You're dealing with a real. A Leninist is not afraid of hiding himself, like looking for other Leninists to connect with in the venue, and of course excluding any real artists or trying to manipulate or bend them or shape them to his point. Just absolutely convoluted way of convoluted view. So then, looking for how they want to get AI on bias. They want to be able to identify biases. So imagine getting people to question themselves on that level, just to turn their brains into goo. Can you imagine that? Like, how about the bias towards beauty, symmetry, wholesomeness? How about that type of bias? Like that the institution would have a bias towards those types of things instead of attacking human nature, trying to turn it into something that most people don't want intuitively. Like, why would you want to challenge that fundamentally if you're into the arts? Well, it might be a different kind of arts, right? It might be the dark arts that they're interested in, not the good ones. And part of that is deception. So the deception of professionality, the deception of variation, the deception of values, the constructionism of these values, artificial values. And then again, big on the socializing part. So, oh yeah, and then afterwards there's going to be a dinner, so you have to show up to this event. Then there's more socializing, more social proof, more social framing. Okay, hayseeds and dummies. No, your natural instincts and natural wanting of good things for wholesome people. No. This is the luxury belief center, and these are the luxury beliefs that are the only acceptable beliefs in good society. And you're going to make sure that you maintain those artificial frameworks in your social circles because you've been educated. So it has really very little to do with content. It just has to do with social manipulation, social framing. Again, putting the good people in the bad frames. Like, oh no, this guy was just tremendous artist, but they don't even like having those conversations. They weed those people out because they don't want to deal with them the entirety of their personality. They don't. They want politics today. And because they're the bottom that wants to be the top, that's the way the process works. So you're either on board or they're going to gang up on you, going to exclude you, going to attack you. But here's the cool thing. It's like with the internet, you can check through these institutions. You see something like that, cross it off the list. Don't waste your time, don't waste your money. And maybe spread some feedback amongst people that put some feedback somewhere where people that are worth a damn might see it. Like, how about young people that don't know these cattle cars they're being railroaded into? Certainly not the secondary side effects that are just easily foreseeable. That it's a catastrophic, at least stupid set of ideas that they've cooked up for themselves. And it's just not me saying that. This isn't just like theory. There are places that you can visit and you can just see the devastating results these people have had, certainly over the course of decades now. Just straight up, easy to see. It's no utopia at the end of their rainbow. It's a dystopia. And the power of your mind to levitate yourself through life in ideological frameworks isn't a power. It's a weakness. It's a disability. Getting negative frames put on people, that wrecks them for life, especially as a young person. Teaching women to axe grind and have beefs with men for ridiculous reasons. That's a lifelong disability, and the deeds that are done with that type of mindset, you add those all up. That's a lot of bad karma. Lots. So, but people who are nihilists, they don't care if they're setting other people up to fail. If they're working for the other side, this is what they do. You know, they're the troll crew. So yeah, think of them more as trolls. They're playing a part. They're trolling. It's not, art is just secondary. Ideology and manipulation is primary. And you only get in those positions to troll other people if you're 100% on their side. So they must have some type of like accelerated program so that again, to those that prove that they're the lowest vibe, they probably have to prove it because they're lockstep. They are not letting anybody in. Like imagine again, 5 acts look different, all the same. So you think of them also as people that have auditions. So they have 100 people come through. If they'll try to, they're negatively selecting. You have to have core competency on things, but you need to have the basic misguided ideological principles that are in fact, it's sabotage, right? Sabotage for them. I wonder if they're hypocritical on their sabotage principles. Probably some of them are. Like, why wouldn't they be? If they have no morals like that, that's, hypocrisy is not something that bothers people on the lowest bottom of the spectrum of subnormalcy. So, but functional ones, right? You have to have high functioning subnormalcy. That's sort of it. But to come back to the positives, the positive is you can see them as like a comedy act, especially if you haven't been sent to that school, if you haven't sent your kids to that school, if you aren't paying for that school, then it's not a tragedy. You're really saving yourself a lot of time, a waste of time. A lot of tragedy, a lot of disappointment, a lot of enmity. And I also like you can fast forward. Like I just saw the act. I fast forward the ones that were just too ridiculous. I don't have 8 minutes for these fools. I don't have 8 seconds. It's really that like that. But I decided to do it this one time to help young people out. Give them a heads up. Like, look, this is how it's going down this time. If you don't know already, this is what to look for. So, second act, third act, I fast forward through it, And now I know that is a school I won't be, even if they send me an invitation, I won't be accepting it. Like, they could send me a check, say, look, you show up, talk for a half hour, I'll give you $100,000. I wouldn't take it. I wouldn't. I wouldn't even write back. There's no point. And that's the type of power you can reclaim for yourself when you have observational abilities, and you do invest the 5 minutes or whatever it was to just do a preview of the venue before you even consider having anything to do with it. So now that you know that, if you go into it anyway, if you say, oh, now I know the rules, now this is what I'm going to do, well, that's going to be your causality. I wouldn't recommend it to any honest person that has any modicum of taste, let alone wants to preserve their sanity long term. Like, what do you win by being in association with people like that? I mean, basically, you just win their association. What can they kick back to you or something in some contrived scheme? Who wants their damn jobs working with them or for them or around them? It's just a gigantic bummer. Like, the results are pre-programmed to stink. So if you can save yourself all that money and all that time, like how this, I won't even click if they have like something that comes up. If there's something recommended by the, won't even click unless it's maybe to look at what the new comedy routine, the trolling, at what level of trolling is happening, maybe on an issue that might be particularly outrageous. But it's still great to have that fast forward button and that you didn't take the time to go there physically. Because, see, that would really make someone angry, I think, if they took the time and money. And so by just fast forwarding, turning the channel, canceling it, you really do. If you get angry about that, you should think about all the time you did save yourself by not having to physically go there like people used to do in the old days. You're taking your time to get up to a city to get it to, and then sit and everything else, and then you had those 5 bombs that were presented. Whew, wow. Talk about being potentially apocalyptic, depending on how you're built. But that's the thing, that's the troll. So when you do feel that, see if you're not as skillful that you just can't get past that, then just realize you will get past that. But now you see it, it's a troll. So you can engage with it on the trolling basis. It's like a guy that was standing outside with a sign, an advertising sign, and he tries to get in front of you or whatever, bumps into you, and you say, hey, get out of my way or something, and then you notice like he's wearing sort of like a fireman's uniform, and they say, well, why did you put that advertisement in front of you? It's like, well, I had to do this because otherwise it would have gotten burned, and it's a famous piece of work, and so it was too close to the fire. And so, in other words, you completely identified who you were dealing with and on what level. But once you do see that, then it's like troll back. Okay, trolls, if you want to do that, but I don't recommend you do that, because what do you get by trolling trolls? Like they have no sense of humor. Like a lot of them, they're ground down to bits. They're ground down to their last wits, which is why they have no humor, and they do get angry real quick. So it's really there's not a point in engaging with them. Like, what do you win? But at least you're like, okay, I see it. This person, or you think it's a janitor, but it's a burglar case in the joint. Like, oh, I mistook you for a janitor, sorry. And he says, yeah, buddy, well, what do you expect? I'm not here for this pay grade. You know what I'm saying? Like, they have that once you see the scam. So, but highly organized, highly funded, and forced from the top down, and it's total. They're trying to get into like total social control. Total social brainwashing in all of the wrong ways, because they don't like how people tick. Like, they want to change human nature because it doesn't suit them. So yeah, they don't like hearing that. See, you say something like that, it carries in the breeze. That doesn't. They don't like hearing that. So if they can, mumble rap you through the day, then they'd much prefer that you got that instead of the other message. So, but these are just the times we live in. There's social structures, there's politics, there's this, there's that. Things happen in different ways. And bad people sometimes have sway in certain times, under certain conditions, and this is what bad people do in our time. And it's so unfortunate because, of course, it's a destruction of the arts. It's taking gullible people and putting them into a garbage dump, funneling them into, sweet talking them into garbage dumps. So, but I want to somewhere believe that at least 20% of people aren't going to go along with it. So for those 20%, cheers to you. Positives. The point is that you're in a place now, you have the capabilities now to not only know what to look for, but you can also not waste as much time and not invest as much time in these places that have become fun houses of deception. Not fun houses, mirror houses, holes of mirrors of deception. And you are saving your time, and you should, as a compassionate person, value your time more than that, to get caught in such traps. So the unfortunate thing you can't really avoid is all of the people damaged by these operations that will be floating around venues that they don't belong into, and that they can also spread the contagion there and basically poison the entire cultural ecosystem. Because that's ultimately what they do. And they did do it. All of Eastern Europe in the Soviet Union had these types of hucksters. Yeah, they were just shilling communism. Now they've got globalism. So, and globalism is a form of communism, so you can sort of see there is continuity there. But again, they're robotic, and where they want you to go doesn't lead to a good place. So you can not only identify them, but you can also not waste as much time. And even if the people that are damaged by these institutions are floating around, you can spot them too. You can limit the amount of let's say, concern you have for their opinions about you, knowing what you know about how they're made. They're just programs, bad ones. So, yeah, Eastern Europe, all the Baltic states, Poland, Ukraine, Hungary, Bulgaria. Now, I don't know if I should say Serbia or not, but being a compassionate person, I will say Serbians. But look for the Russians too. Come on, for God's sakes, they didn't deserve the type of brain beating that they got. It just was bad politics that turned the whole country into a zoo. Not just the country, but well, then the region, their neighbors. So yeah, their cultural. So they didn't have no. This is the independent culture. No. That's no go. So right, and yet that's not how that worked there, and it didn't work in their satellite states that way. So all those artists between 1945, 1989. Excluded from the arts, except in some circumstances where they somehow got themselves it's somewhere or pushed through their own selves in some way. So those are the people to look to as inspirations. Try to find out their stories, collect them, and look into how they had to live during that period, because that's what we more or less have now. Whatever, whether Russia falls into anarchy or not, the globalist type attack vector has not uh, uh, abetted at all. It's just become more formalized, more polished, more widespread. And it is a method of control and a method of division and a method of agitation and a method of sabotage. It's just more of the in-house variety that's fostered from, again, outside entities. The international was the idea that this was outside the Soviet Union. So they're sort of the international side of the communist, or they called themselves, again, socialists. They have sociological ideas that helps to solidify their despotic grip on politics, more or less. That's sort of, they just boil everything down to politics. So culture, it's not culture, it's politics. It is to them. And because they're the people who matter, because they'll get violently outraged if you don't, conform to their social mandates, then you're the bad guy. They're the good guys. That's how they like to see it. So that whole good guy, bad guy thing, they also think that's politics. Like, if I lie this way and I'm the king of Sheba, then that's not a lie. That's a edict from the king. So truth is all about power for them. This is the official story. You don't have that official story, you're the liar. So these are social games. They happen in different places at different times to different peoples, and so that's why it's also a really good idea to retreat to the studio and vet your associates and realize that the official avenues are compromised on these levels, and they may or may not be more or less manageable depending on where you are. Like, that's the other thing. Don't think in terms of monolithic oppressive power. They might have it in some places for some time. It might also fall apart. Let's also remember that whatever they said about themselves, they were not popular in Eastern Europe at all. So, but what's popularity? Like, they asked them a couple of bland questions and that's it. Like, yeah, are you ready to pull out the pitchforks and revolt? Yes or no? No? Okay. Guess we're doing okay then. Like, this is more or less how they see things. If you're not going to revolt, then they can push the limits of whatever they want to do. Want to increase productivity? Oh, it's going to be 996 month this month. Vacations are canceled. Yeah. Oh, by the way, you can't cross the border because it's illegal to travel. Or every phone call you make, they're going to be listening in, and if there's something that could even mildly endanger their position, they're going to be on you without you even knowing what you said that made some invisible person so worried about their tenuous position amongst massive thieves and criminals and despots. So again, how should politics be? The idealistic version of it is that the top 5% do make it to the top, but they're really good leaders. And they're compassionate leaders, they're generous leaders, they're wise leaders. See, let's think in terms of philosophy. These are the things that the leadership class should have. And when they do have it, society and culture and everything else flourishes. When you don't have it, it falls apart. So take it from the macro level, take it all the way down to the individual level, and then everything in between. So we know people who adopt bad ideas, they have the bad causality of that. Now some people say, I have bad ideas, and so, but what that does mean is that we're going in separate directions. So whereas I don't or cannot really control or care about where you're going, I do have to care about where I'm going. So maybe what you say is true, but maybe it isn't. And maybe I have to figure it out at the end of the day anyway. So, but at the same time, yeah, if you're not wise, if you don't develop insight, if you are not wise, you will not have good things coming to you. Now, their spiel is that they promise all the good things in the future if you listen to everything they say. But that's when you should hit the doubt button. Because, again, their programmatic debaucheries are proven failures on real social metrics. But there are metrics that they don't really say out loud, such as divide and conquer, that it works for them that way. So, they're the money, so they get the funding. That's what they do. So, but extremely tragic for places like East Germany, but now we see Hungary. Hungary is now sort of like Belarus or Belarus, right? They got one big fat guy. He's the leader, and everybody else better shut up. And he's got people who work with him, and that's it. This is, people want to have a new rail line. That's not. They better ask him the right way, but they might not have the money because they don't invest it really the way they should. Sort of, however they want to do it, which isn't necessarily the right way. Because how can somebody do something the right way when they do that type of political maneuvering the wrong way? Like that's the thing. Good leadership inspires people to connect for good things to happen. Bad leaders, they attract con men like themselves. So it has a negative multiplier effect. Bad people don't attract good people. Now, good people attract bad people. That's the problem. See, and good people, if they're not good at recognizing bad people, well, then they don't have much good of that, do they? But good people are attracted to good people. And that's why they put so much effort into artifice, because they want to present themselves as a good person, as a bad person. But the deeds are what divide them. So do pay attention to people. What are they doing again? What have they done? What have they said? Who do they hang out with? What are those people like? Why don't they have any issues with people that people should have issues with? So maybe you don't really understand the person you're dealing with. That's also something so infantile that you can see in propagandistic situations like we have today in the modern world, is people think that they know you. They see a couple of films and they assume the best for you. But with these political operators, I mean, it's night and day what these people are and how they present themselves. So pay attention for that. You see it, you know it, stay away. On the other hand, you see genuineness, you see some authenticity, you see Also, some wisdom. I think in politics you need to be more wise and have a little bit more insight than your common person. Because it's not just about being right. That's the other thing. Being pedantically right, that's sort of what professors do. You know, professor has that image. He's sort of pedantically right about academic issues, but there's no real interconnectivity with the world. There's theory and then there's practice. But in a politician, the good leadership means being strong as well, like, and not being fooled, taking positions that you should take, and changing positions that you should change. Innovating, but in a right way, and not innovating towards creating more frictions or difficulties than need be. But again, these are idealistic principles. The practice is really where the rubber meets the road. And in many ways, like, how can anyone not say that out of controlness is a gigantic factor in who gets what in these days? It's out of controlness factor. It's also out of control how some people's egos develop, although you could also track it back and say there is a causality. They had bad thoughts, they committed bad deeds, they said bad words, and now we're in for some bad times. Right, on a social level, on an international geopolitical level, same things can happen as in a dinner hall. Just imagine you have all the nations of the world sitting at a dinner table, and then the conversation they're having between each other. China stands up, has a very long militaristic speech, sits back down, takes the fork, stabs it in its hand, continues eating. Right? You could go through the different nations. You know, Turkey starts shooting spitballs at the UK and Italy and every other European country. Then you've got the North Africans just reaching over the dinner table and taking something off of everyone's plate. Go on down the line. So, but if you are the most civilized person in a sort of uncivilized world, what can you do under those circumstances? Sometimes you got to duck, right? When Canada throws a snowball at you, you got to duck every once in a while. Or you get hit in the face, or vice versa. Canada, how disappointing. See, I would say there's these types of, really it's Canada, New Zealand, UK, and Australia that they're really getting hit hard by these bad values. But that was sort of foreseeable. I mean, this has been, they certainly kicked it off in 2014, so we're already 10 years into these programs. But it wasn't better really before that. It was more or less they declared war on the world in that year. So, but before then they weren't much better. There wasn't really, culturally there wasn't a lot of good times after the 90s. It was sort of like 50-50 in the 90s. Could have been like 60-40 in the 70s, and it's just dwindled since then. This is the other thing, like when the occupation of Eastern Europe happened, it was a dramatic event. It was open. Everybody saw it. What happened in the U.S. was from behind the curtain. It was a gradual rotting out. So, but now it's come to such a level of extreme orthodoxy with luxury beliefs that it's like everybody in the world's asking themselves what the hell happened. So, I don't think it's going to stay forever, but that's it won't stay forever. I mean, that's not even optimism. It has to change. And the people threw it off in Eastern Europe, and so why the hell should they accept some other version of it from a different vector? That, again, can be classified in the same genus because it produces the same stupefying results. So, and if you do look at the arts in Eastern Europe, it's a gigantic desert for decades, you could say. Mostly a desert. Now, some people jump out of the woodworks. No, it's not true. Well, I say great. Follow those examples. There are some. But just try to imagine a world where that didn't happen, where these sociologists didn't have their stupefying regime implemented. Just try to imagine how different the world would be, how just amazingly better it would be if that didn't happen. So, how long would this winterification of the arts and culture and social situations be? We don't know. This is uncharted territory. These types of attacks, where they're coming from, how they're being carried out, all of this is just new. Never happened before. So, but my hope is, again, when people start talking about this amongst themselves and start protecting themselves more from the most vicious attacks and most vicious wastes of time, that there is a way. There's got to be some decentralized way of being in some way affiliated with real cultural people going forward, realizing that they don't want that process happening. That's not something they really cherish. So but maybe not all people in the world see it the same way. Like maybe there's even other cultures, like non-Western cultures, that are interested, but they probably are, but at the same time, you really do have to look what type of country or people you're dealing with. Or living within your countries, but basically understanding it's been shut down on a cultural level. And just being able to live with that. Like, we didn't have these things before. We didn't have real access to culture. We would just work to death. So it is it's not just luxury beliefs, it's luxury problems, right? It's like, why does my Louis Vuitton handbag have a crease in it after use? So, yeah, if you have the luxury to slum it through troll farms, if you want to call that a luxury, you can call it a luxury, but it's not so luxurious if you think about it. I think people that have better tastes will be able to imbibe in real luxury beliefs and turn those luxury beliefs into luxury lifestyles, even though that lifestyle probably will involve a lot of poverty, because people with money don't have taste these days. It's like, wow, what a weird phenomenon. And people with money used to be able to have taste because they could really imbibe in it. But think about it, a lot of them, that's the nouveau riche phenomenon, right? They get a lot of money, they buy a lot of crap. That's sort of what we have. But Old money is crap too. It's like they don't know how they're being rooked. Like, it's embarrassing for these people to show up to these events. Really embarrassing. Get their photographs and stuff like that. How about get like a diploma? Oh, it's like I'm certified. We're entering a comedic time, despite all of the potential negative downsides. See, if you turn it to comedy, you're going to be living in a comedy, and not a tragedy. But I do recommend compartmentalizing and innovating and vetting a lot more. And do value your time. It's also not about just enjoying art. It's about the art of living that matters. The art of living and doing things well, and thinking good thoughts, saying good words, and doing good deeds. One thing that did come to me recently was the idea that some might have that I knock women or something. I don't. I think there are great women out there. They certainly are. But they can certainly, there's a contingent of them that aren't so great. So I don't really make their sexuality the primary thing. I do look at what they're producing. And if they're producing enmity between the sexes, I don't, not in on that part of the program. But there's some women out there, they understand it's important to support men. And they do a very good job doing it, and they should be praised when they are found. There's different ways they can do that. So one is, how about this? Don't betray the dude you're with. The relationship might move on. It might also amicably move apart after a certain time. Well, okay, but don't betray the next dude you're with. And don't develop snarky ideas about some type of supremacy you might have because you got a lot of thirsty dudes trying to feel you up or something else. Because let me tell you what happens, sort of. I mean, there's women that get into the whole extraction business, but that's not a business I would recommend anybody getting into. But on the other hand, look, there's a time and place for all that stuff. It isn't the primary thing, especially not for men nor for society as a whole. So you need to compartmentalize your relationships and also all the other things. And certainly egotism. Just because a bunch of thirsty dudes will do anything for you doesn't mean you should string them along, play them, or play them off on one another, or think you're some type of paragon on this planet when what is it that you're really offering? What do you have on the table other than your presence? And then what is your presence really worth in terms of exchange of ideas, right? You have a better idea, let's hear it, but I don't have all that much time. Maybe write it on one piece of paper and send it to somebody that should know something. I think women are great communicators, some of them. And so how they could play a role these days, it's possible in Parliament. There could be a couple of members of them, because they are connected to their community in a wholesome way. But of course, that's something that would have to be reviewed. Can't be assumed in these days of ours. For example, the opposition of Belarus, this woman who's representing her husband who's been wrongly imprisoned, she's amazing. She's amazing. Now, will she stay amazing? We'll see. I mean, this what has been amazing about this time is that a lot of bad things have happened. But that doesn't mean they're going to stay bad or get worse. It's just the way things are. There's also been a couple of Ukrainian MPs that said a bunch of, every time they're in front of a camera, they say a lot of sensible things. But on the whole, like pushing for quotas, like we need to be 50%, otherwise it's not fair. You're crazy. There's not a guy in the world that doesn't usually have a connection or relationship with a woman on some level, and they do talk about different things. Now, guys trying to talk about things that they don't want to hear about, then that's the extent of their interest in politics. But some are interested, some do want to know, some are curious, and some, how about this? This is something I've really treasured in all of my relationships with great women, is that some of them are very wise and they also give you good advice. But some of them don't. Some of it is self-interested. Okay. Some of them will turn on you and call you the worst names in the book overnight for no reason. So you want to be a strong man, you mean if you want to have to deal with women, you better have a lot of fortitude, because it's not the easiest thing in the world. Even though the social perception is it's very difficult dealing with men in relationships. No, actually no. Men have very few demands in their relationships. And those demands should be met. They should be over-met. They should not just be met. They should be exceeded. Now, above and beyond that, it's just gravy. And it's a great thing when there's a great relationship between two very different people, but that also requires allowing a lot of flexibility, space, adaptation. Which brings me even back to the living arrangements between men and women. This being stacked up on top of one another, that often does not help the relationship. On the other hand, if you cannot trust the other party to be alone and to do their thing, but not in such a way that creates enmity, then it really is a nice civilized thing. But at any time, any person can die, right? 2-minute rule, 5-minute rule. You make yourself overly dependent on relationships, you're not going to make it long term. It's just not one of those things. You should enjoy it while it lasts. But good women could make it last if they wanted to. And they should want to. Because it really is the best thing for them to be within family structures. And not out there hitting those hard streets, because of course, you can tell them that. A lot of them are just going to have to find out the hard way. The Buddha, how does he wash his hands from the whole matter? He says that's karma. You do bad, you get bad. That's it. That's as neutral as things get. So you turn a bad relationship into bad personality traits, then you treat people bad. That, you see this? This is not, that causality isn't going to take you anyplace good. So if you do have those issues, you got to let them go. You do not need to get funneled into a conspiracy that all men are out to get you or something like that. And if the truth be told, there's a bunch of women that are not qualified, they're not good enough to be in a relationship, so that's why they're not in one. You need to look at it from that perspective. You cannot, finding good men these days that don't have their brains scrambled, you best take care of them. Take care of them like you would a valuable horse, at least. Make sure the stall is clean. Check the hooves every once in a while. Look in check the teeth. Look at the mane. If they put some brush work on the horse, right? Make sure it's looking good. It's comfortable. And then let that horse roam free. Give him a couple carrots every now and again. Maybe some. Oh, apples are good. Some of them, an apple every once in a while. Right? Be nice to the horse. You know what that's like. That's about the extent of it. Now, anything above that, feelings above that, they're great too. If you extend them to the rider of the horse, make sure that his boots are polished. Right? That he doesn't have a hole in his pant leg, although that might be something he takes care of himself because he's not relying on you for those things. But in any way you can help out, then make sure you do that. And keep any type of bad words to yourself. Work on it. Getting rid of them internally. Bad words come from bad thoughts, and what are bad thoughts? Well, they're defilements. So keep them locked up and get rid of them on your own. You don't take them into the toilet with you. You leave what you leave in the toilet behind. And you clean your butt and wash your hands. That sort of thing. Because let me tell you, out there in this crazy world, and again, you're dealing with a man who doesn't have his brain scrambled. He's dealing with crazy people, most likely, some level. He's dealing with a lot of enmity and hate out there. A lot of aggravation. So these relationships, I hear these men, they come back, they go from their job to their second job, which is their relationship with these horrible women. They're running around trying to please them. Stop that right now. If you're like that, don't even think about getting into a relationship with a man. You think he's there to please you? You have things completely upside down. This is the problem. That is a persuasive argument for certain women. Like, oh, wow, look, this empowerment means I'm flipping the script. Well, it leads to enmity is what it leads to. It leads to a lot of friction over a lot of nonsense. It leads you butting into a lot of things that you don't need to be butting into. And the results are wrecked relationships, even if they're still socially enforced relationships that are not happy ones. Who wants any part of that? Like, why? If you're in something like that, you should get out of something like that. And men, like, I would say at least 80%, now the lowest 20% of masochists will stay in these types of relationships, but 80% of men are going to end up bouncing, but they're going to have a bad time during the whole relationship. So this means my coworkers, right? This means my neighbors. This means when, I throw a football and it just hits them for some reason, they spaz out and try to kill me instead of laughing it off or saying something else, because they're all jammed up because the relationships are crap. These are guys that have heart attacks at like 53. Oh, poor man, he died. Yeah, well, why? His life was just hell. And his relationship made it that way. So if you're a man, even if you're in that 20% of mass kids, get out. It's not doing you a dang bit of good. And not anyone else. See, remember, see everybody else around you. If you're angry and you've got good reasons why, it's still not good for everyone else. It's really not. Like if I budge in front of you in line, and there could be a very good reason for it, I don't expect to get punched in the face like that. But you might do it. And you might also get arrested for doing that because you're too on edge, and you're too on edge because your relationships are messed up. So I also think that means effective communicating. You have to, but also having space, your own space, that helps a lot. Things get too crazy, too many insults, it's just time to go. Don't think that you're going to make things better by trying to change things directly. Sometimes you just got to let things go and go somewhere else and not think about it. Also be able to let it go at all times. Look, she's acting crazy because somebody else, she wants to be with someone else, maybe. If that's the case, let her go. Let that guy have what he wants, because he might find, just like you, that it's not her. But whereas he's stuck with her, you're not. So you've won this ride of evolution. You're ahead. Now just don't get into another one, especially one like that. But yeah, it's really cool to go to the social perspective, see how coworkers are living, and then connecting the causality of their behavior with what they're experiencing. And if we have social disruptions like we have now, all of these things are aggravated, and it does have a debilitating effect. Which is why they've been instituted by people that aren't well-wishing us, to say the least. So, but I've said it before, but I'll say it again. Yeah, women, more vetting, but vetting not just for money, although money is a part of it, but vetting for values and for integrity. How about that one? That's something people are like, what? Like, integrity? What's that? Yeah. And although a lot of guys, look, the younger guys are also really dumb. It's going to take them till at least 30 to sort of sort themselves out. And so getting messed up with one of those is, it's not really advisable. If you're looking for a more stable thing, you're going to have to think a little bit older. And this used to be common knowledge, but today it's like taboo, because of course men and women are equals. That's it, period. No, end of discussion. They're the same from the day they're born to the day they die, and anybody says different is a hater. That's how we do things in 2023. Okay, Grandpa, thanks for telling us what's just not true on any level. Thanks for that, and bye. Slam the door behind them, bolt the door. Yeah, let's get back to the conversation. Yeah, men and women are totally different. Also, women, this attachment you have for cute things. Like, think of the cutest thing you can possibly think of the cutest thing. Well, that's something you have. Men don't have that, but uh, that cuteness, it's for children. That's you're disposed you're towards little cute things. Dressing up little cute things, little cute outfits. You're built for that. Men are not. That's gigantic. Now some will bump in here, barge in here with some boots, like, oh, I'm not like that. Well, good, you're an outlier. Nobody cares about you. Take some care about yourself. If that's not you, then don't. I'm not talking to you. Nobody needs to talk to somebody who's not like that. But many are. Majority. Overwhelming majority. Mixing with riff and rap, that didn't happen. Families protected their daughters, especially from predation. Because, of course, getting mixed up with ruffians is tragedy. It's gigantic tragedy. Not just for the woman, for children, of course. So they protected their daughters. They did not expose them to everyone in the world, not in schools. And they tried to guide them towards families and potential suitors that would treat them right. And of course, the expectation was that the daughter would treat whoever they chose for them right. And if they didn't, it would have been a sign of not just great disrespect, but a gigantic incompetence on their part. This is your job, figure it out. It's not that hard. So you can approach relationships from the standpoint of a business level, but not the type of business you're thinking about. Good enough is good enough, but you should not be circulating or opening yourself up to the outside world. And this is the problem. A lot of these women, they think, oh yeah, of course, I'm so super smart. I'm going to fall for the same 5% of gigolos as every other dummy. So really, you're not all that good at picking. It's really sort of one of those things. See it in a different light. Like maybe somebody can give you some advice on that you might not have. And certainly keep yourself away from the party circuit, especially when you're young, because look, you pick up a lot of bad baggage that way. It's all presented as fun and everything else, but a lot of people aren't better for it. And there was a reason why there was a little bit more social decorum in times gone by, because it is better for people long term to be living wholesome, honest, simple lives. It's a good idea to consider what face you're talking to when you're having a conversation or when you're discussing one topic or another. What do you put in front of your mind's eye? This type of optionality should not be overlooked. It's how you reclaim your autonomy. And of course, it can also be left. It's like leaving it in neutral. You don't have to put it into to another gear, into another thing. Just immediately going from one thought to the next. Think of like a worker using a lever or a gear shifter, and he's just jamming gears all the time. He's going first, second, third, fourth. He's really trying to run the machine faster than it should go all the time. That operator is going to have an accident at some point. He's either going to grind the gears or some type of operator error or whatnot, and that's akin to what we Westerners are trained to do, because we're doing jumping jacks from 8 a.m. to when do they let kids out? I hope it's 2 o'clock. There's people doing more jumping jacks than that. Just having kids doing jumping jacks, mental jumping jacks, physical jumping jacks. Get here, go there, do this, do that. It's understandable that Westerners have this conditioning, because we do have this conditioning. So it's about slowing things down, taking time. And unfortunately, our societies are built, it's like our societies are built for 100% uptime. You need to be up like a server 100% of the time. Otherwise, things will fall apart, or just in a constant state of scarcity. Artificial scarcity, by the way. So that's sort of one of the dilemmas. This drives people to a point that they that it ultimately is not rationally explainable. You're asking yourself, well, the implied assumption was if you do this, this, and this, and this, or you achieve this, that you will be content. But once you realize that a bunch of that assumption is not true, that can be a big demotivator. So it's important to return to things from different points of view, because if that's not working, just stop thinking in those terms and then maybe shift to a Zazen approach. It's about whatever you're doing in the nowness of now as a teaching tool, something like that. If you get into the mastery of the crafts, to the mastery of making things, that can be a spiritual practice. If you turn it into a spiritual practice, it can be a spiritual practice. So in that sense, it's not slavery. It's a dance. And also what makes it unbearable is the thought that it could just extend out to the rest of your life, but that's getting into the future. You only have these 5 minutes. You only have these 2 minutes. And so in that way it is a dance. And when it stops, it stops. If you're not hitting the gas all the time and you decide you're quite okay when you aren't hitting the gas, that's great. You think that all the Farfignugan and none of the gas. That's sort of the concept. So no car, right? Not in the moment that you can bring yourself into a state of mindful reflection, which also gives you the optionality to choose different things. Let's look at this from the comedic standpoint. Let's look at this from, how big is this again? Like, what was yesterday? What was yesterday's big thing? What's today's big thing? Is this thing really that big? Why is this being so aggravating this time? You're watching how these things happen, and you're learning, you're gaining insight. And most of the times, no, the crocodile is not in the room. It's not. Look at that. You've got a big room, no crocodile in it. Isn't that fantastic? Maybe it's not a big room, it's a small room. Still, we like to make these comparisons all the time, and then, well, we don't have this, so that's why I'm feeling that there's something missing. But that's not skillful. It can happen. It's not skillful. It's normal for some people. If they lose a lot, they are in a lot of pain. That's normal. But it doesn't have to be that way. The supernormal path, nothing. No pain at all, it's gone. That glass, it's already broken. Now it's broken, it's gone. There's no attachment to the glass. And yet it's not disdain for the glass, right? That it, because it will break, disdain for the glass. No, it's appreciation. It's gratitude. Glass is rare, even if it is easy to break. It's not something you find on a beach except in the form of little stones, perhaps. Pieces of old bottles. Connecting to the face you want to talk to, I think that's a good way of guiding yourself. So imagine this, I'm talking to the real Russian opposition. And first off, I want to make it, just tone things down. It's a question of governance, that's all. So take all the personalities out of it. We're looking at it just from the standpoint of abstraction. Just because I say something doesn't mean something's going to change. But what I can do is make a couple of suggestions that I think will work for you long term. So being in the Russian opposition, I can say this to a genuine Russian opposition and not some botched version of it. And so I can speak freely. I think it's very easy to get distracted by bad actors because they're in or close to the positions that people believe will or could change things. And although that's partly true, it's better to look at the abstractions because there's no point in winning as the opposition, although at this time that would be quite easy based on the circumstances that are not good. I think there's a couple of things you can do. So the entirety of the legal system, including the review of the laws and its implementation, all the people connected with that need to be replaced with a new system. So new laws that might be based on the old laws. We have to look at what did the Tsar write down, then what came after that, and we'll have a computer splice it together so that it's reduced by maybe 50% or more. And then so it will be vastly simplified. And then there will be a vastly different way of conducting legal proceedings that will be both efficient and fair according to the law, with no funny business, period. Absolutely not. Now, this might seem counterintuitive to Russians to do something like this, but it has benefits that you might not think of or think are true. If the justice system serves the people, it's helping everyone, it's not hurting them. And it also encourages people to increase their exchange with you because they know you are a law-abiding people and the law is clear and easy to read and easy to understand. And so it is the foundation of all trust within the country and outside its borders. And you might think this is too dramatic. Well, guess what? Dramatic times require dramatic actions. If Russia wants to reestablish its position in the world, it needs to make some dramatic changes, and this is the first one. complete reform and complete re-architecting of the legal system. So that's number one. Now, number two, although it might also be number one as well, is ending the war and returning to the pre-war borders. Now, some people might say this is crazy. Why, you're not a Russian? You wouldn't. If you were a Russian, you wouldn't say this. Look, there are enough naval bases on the Novorossiya side. And because what happened in Ukraine, Crimea is theirs. It's the only way to come to a honorable peace settlement. Now, the Russians aren't going to want to hear this, like right in the back, like the super nationalists. They're going to call me a foreigner or say I'm a traitor or something. I don't belong in the Russian opposition, but I would just tell the audience that that's not true. The legal basis of the borders of Ukraine were set before the war, and they will be the borders after the war. The war was a mistake. That is the position of the Russian opposition. Now, people, the whole imperialist business model of the Russian state is something that should not be taken for granted. And in Ukraine's case, they are an independent nation, and that's it. It's going to take a long time to get over this bad period of time and to rebuild trust. But it will. One thing I know, it will never be rebuilt if we do not first reform the legal system. So, on top of that, the political system, how things are voted for and whatnot, a bunch of smart heads are going to come in here and say that no, it's impossible to have free and fair elections in Russia. I disagree. I think it needs to be curated, but it's possible. And that also with the electoral process, we can change it so that we're actually attracting talent instead of just allotting positions based on nepotism. Because that system doesn't work. It doesn't just not work in Russia, it doesn't work anywhere. You end up with poor leadership. So I do understand there's a certain reason to have certain paranoia in certain areas, and I do agree there should be a lot of vetting. But I do believe that fundamentally the process can be turned around so that, like every other normal country in the world, at least before all these hateful operations were started, that good leadership, it is possible to select for it and to get it on average. It's not going to be perfect, but I do believe there's a better way of doing it, and it has to be done and implemented in order to get the leadership to turn the damn country around. So if there's vested interests that are in the way of that happening, they're not part of the Russian opposition. They're in their own world of self-enrichment. These are people that want resources, right? They want to get their hands on something, and that's why they're in politics. Those people, they're not part of the Russian opposition, right? They're just a front for an opposition. They're the same damn thing. I mean, how negatively selected can you be to have enriched yourself in this current system, but then got bounced out of it, now want to bounce back in as the opposition? What? Like, you just don't... Some people are crazy. Like, they have no self-awareness. Like, they have no idea why people should question why they're getting involved in the Russian opposition. So do be advised for that. If that happens, it'll just be another catastrophe for Russia. And because I'm a well-meaning person for Russia, I don't want to see that happen. There has to be a true opposition, and it needs to stay true. Now, of course, that's saying a lot, but and of course, there's never any perfect plan, but the one that is more perfect than the others is the plan you should adopt. No matter how radical it may appear, that is my recommendation. Now, as far as the past goes, and this is a really strange problem that apparently only Russia has at this time, is this memory war that people are talking about, where this is the roots of alternative reality. And these are not good roots. It is very unwise to go into the past. And it's also very unwise to use the past to manipulate the present, especially in negative ways, like creating enmity when it wasn't there, when it would have died out. It was revived instead, and then misapplied to the wrong people. So that's a very bad process. It doesn't create good things, it creates bad things. So we're going to let the past go. So we're not invested in the past. Everything that happened after 1917, we can put it in a box. So we'll say 1917 to 2023, box. Post 2023, New Russia. Okay, and New Russia has no connections with an investment in a past that was a fabrication anyway. Look, you should get it better than anyone else, that your own system created the people that created the tropes that you believed in that weren't true. And you know why they did that? Because they were worldly people that wanted to present themselves in a better light than they were, or should have been cast in. So you know what I'm saying is true. So drop it. It's a bad play. It doesn't make any sense. It's wrong. But this is the problem. The people that came through that system, they're vitally invested. They can't break with the past. That's too much a part of their personic ego that's been artificially created in a lab. So I get it. Like, there's men that come back from the war, they have a shake in like their left arm. It just shakes. And it's because the wiring, the neuron wiring, the electrical circuits up there, they've been scrambled. So it's not the guy's fault. He's been conditioned, he's been injured. And so these knee-jerk reactions you have to historical interpretation is one of these reflexes. So you have to also have some compassion for yourself and others. This was an implementation of psychology that has adversely affected your decision-making processes, adversely affected your lives. So admitting that is healthy, because just like cutting off a dead foot is healthy, because otherwise it will poison the rest of your body and mind. So we put it in a box and we move on. And the new Russia is going to be a great place. It's going to be like Central and Eastern Europe, just way, way better, because it's way, way richer and way, way freer free of the past and free of a future that would otherwise be doomed. The Volga trade route that led to the north of the Caspian Sea, and then they would sail across the Caspian Sea to Persia. That was the connection on that side. And then you had the other route on the other side. And so it stands to reason that when some men retired, that's where they retired to over the centuries. But of course, they came into contact with all different types of tribes, and for a time they were overrun and vassalized themselves. So all that old business isn't quite clear, which is why there's still this murkiness. And yet what was need not continue to be. You can completely reform. Just imagine you're sailing around in a leaky, busted up wooden ship that leans, and the mast is jerry-rigged together, and the sails ripped and held together with bits of twine, and the anchor's rusty, and it doesn't release properly, and there's just so many other different things about that boat that aren't good, and you make it to a place, you ditch it, it's done. You could even do a ceremony, you put some firewood up on it, and maybe a warrior's body or two, set it ablaze and just set it into the current of the river. And then build a new boat with new materials, new technologies, new principles that are sound, because you know what it's like on a leaky boat. That's how you get to the next level of design. You don't get to the next level being sentimental about a past that wasn't true anyway. That isn't true. And so again, in this case, I do see it like a bar fight. It's just two people that have a misunderstanding about themselves. And yet, if they can dispense with their illusions, then they can return to a friendly parity. And if not friendly, at least a neutral parity. I always like returning to academic positions and revising what one knows about a place. For example, did you know that Rurik was elected leader in Novgorod in 862? It's true. And yet, think of that date, 862, that's also sort of late. Other places were doing other things at that time. And then if you consider the Vangarian trading routes that used the Dnieper and Nesta rivers, and then so there was like ancient trading taking place in those areas over many centuries before that, but nothing was really formalized. One of the most fascinating things about history is that there is such a thing as prehistory. That means we just don't know. Nobody wrote anything down, or if they did, nothing survived. Although we know most likely people were there because there's artifacts. Some of it is written, some don't have written artifacts. go all the way back to the Stone Age. It's very fascinating. It can give you an enormous perspective on the variety of life on this planet. But the Vangarians were really cool. They were proto-Scandinavian, Northern European tribes. Swedes, Balts, Danes, Jutes, you name it. Whole different bunches of them. And they use those riverways, which are probably really cool. It's a shame that there's so much political fighting, because I would really love to make that expedition again. But the old way, where they would pull the ships over land like sleds or pull them on frozen ice. But when it was summer, that was smooth sailing, or at least they hoped to have positioned themselves in some place, but it wasn't always smooth sailing. They had famously dangerous rapids in certain places where you had to get off the boat, and believe it or not, that's the place where a lot of ambushes took place, because if you were a local and knew the area, and you knew how many men served on these ships, and you had maybe double or triple that, you could just take all their stuff. But, of course, when you do something like that, word does get back to the people usually that didn't get their stuff from A to B, and then there can be scuffles of that level too, and I'm sure stuff like that happened throughout the centuries. What we don't know about it, but we can assume, based on reports, that that's what's happened. Now, if you made it down to the Black Sea, you went on your way past Kiev, you made it down to the Black Sea, then it was more or less smooth sailing. That was like the little Mediterranean. You could probably sail pretty, if you were even afraid of getting too far out, you could follow the coast down Romania, Bulgaria. Then you get through the Dardanelles, right? Then there's a lot of nice little seas there too as well. Nice microclimates. And then you come into the Aegean. Got all those islands, very old islands, by the way. Crete has ancient civilizations, are known to have lived there. It's very rich cultural area. All of Greece, naturally. All of Italy, naturally. A lot of North Africa, let's not forget that. They say where the Sahara Desert is, that they find tree stumps. There were gigantic forests, old timber. Now they said that the desertification of North Africa led to the first major centralizing of cities, because there was a lot of people that migrated, centralized, herded together. More passively, slowly over centuries. I'm sure it didn't happen all at once, so people just got used to living with more people, and maybe, again, there was organizers that also organized the public infrastructure. Also, public religion, also having the time to also consider weightier matters than how to pay the rent. Instead, considering what did they believe in really? What were their myths? What were their, maybe not, what were their insights? That's I think the best question to ask. See, if we look for the good face in every conversation, the face that is oftentimes covered by the ugly masks. If you talk to the true face, the true audience, then you can convey all of the insight that you have been able to discern over your lifetime, which cost everything. But you have what you've accumulated, not a drop more. And yet, if you have accumulated wisdom for yourself, I can't think of a more health-imbibing tonic of pure vitality than that. In any case, there was a legend that somebody asked Rurik to do some governing out in the wilder parts. Gotta say that 3 times, wilder. Like we're talking really wide, blast out East Asian or West Asian steppe out loud. People wearing animal skins. Good archers, good horseback riders, horseback riding country. They say some of these bowmen were extremely skilled. And if you've ever shot or attempted to shoot an arrow from a horse while it's galloping and hit an apple at 30 yards, you get back to me when you're capable of doing such a thing, because they did it. So you want to talk about horseback riding people. They knew it. They lived it. They were it. So it's good to look at the good face of the person you're talking to or addressing. Don't look at the past. Don't look at blame. But look at compassion and generosity instead. That people can and do make mistakes. But they can also repent and redeem themselves.